Mr. Speaker, the Rules Committee met yesterday and reported a rule, House Resolution 1065, providing for consideration of S. 3522, the Ukraine Democracy Defense Lend-Lease Act, under a closed rule. The rule provides for 1 hour of debate equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on Foreign Affairs. The rule provides for one motion to commit. The rule extends recess instructions, suspension authority, and same-day authority through May 13. Finally, the rule deems H.Res. 1035 as passed. Mr. Speaker, Vladimir Putin's criminal war of aggression and atrocity against the sovereign nation of Ukraine has dismembered the second-largest country in Europe. Putin's soldiers have killed more than 2,700 Ukrainian civilians and more than 100 children in Ukraine. They have raped and murdered untold numbers of women, leaving their bodies in the street. They have wounded thousands of civilians, and they have displaced 10 million Ukrainians, creating the largest exodus of displaced persons since the Nazis rampaged through Europe. And they have traumatized a nation. It is a sobering thing to canvass the damage on today, which is Holocaust Remembrance Day. Putin's invasion is intended to deal a fatal blow to democracy in Ukraine and around the world. But Putin's lurch into fascist aggression has actually unified and galvanized the democratic world, the democratic nations and peoples and movements of the world. I concede that Putin still has his cheerleaders for his homophobia, his corruption, and his white nationalist racism around the world. I concede that some people, even in this body, continue to chant the filthy words Russia hoax to describe what we know from our own intelligence community of Putin's unceasing efforts to subvert democracy all over the world. And I concede that Vladimir Putin has been called a genius by a former twice-impeached president for his assault on a sovereign democratic nation. But the vast majority of Americans and the vast majority of democratic societies around the world reject Putin's atrocities against democracy. And President Zelensky and President Biden have rallied the world against Putin and in defense of the heroic people of Ukraine standing strong against this aggression. People who have more courage in their pinky than Vladimir Putin and his thugs will ever be able to understand. Mr. Speaker, NATO members have sent or promised at least $8 billion in weapons to Ukraine. The billions we have sent from the United States of America has made a key difference in allowing the people of Ukraine to defend themselves. The people of America have paid for anti-tank and anti-air systems, for helicopters, for drones, for grenade launchers, for 50 million rounds of ammunition, and more. Today, the Ukraine Democracy Defense Lend-Lease Act of 2022 comes before Congress as an important part of the effort to defend Ukraine. This act is rooted in the Lend-Lease program of World War II, which President Roosevelt proposed in January of 1941, and which allowed our government to lend or to lease war supplies and equipment to any nation whose security was defined as vital to the defense and the security of the United States. Passage of that act enabled Great Britain and Winston Churchill to keep fighting and to survive the fascist Nazi bombardment until the United States could enter the war. President Zelensky has said that Ukraine needs weapons to sustain themselves, and President Biden has answered that call with billions in military assistance since Russia's full-blown invasion began on February 24th, a day that will live in infamy in the freedom-loving world. On April 21, last Thursday, President Biden announced that we will be sending an additional $800 million in military aid to Ukraine, the 8th such installment, which will include 72 howitzers, 144,000 artillery rounds, 72 tactical vehicles, and more than 120 Phoenix Ghost tactical drones. And today I understand President Biden has asked for an additional aid package for the next several months. But S-3522 will streamline current legal authorities under the Arms Export Control Act that allows our government to lend defense articles needed to defend civilian populations. So we will eliminate red tape to make it easier for our government to lend or lease necessary military equipment in this struggle to defend Ukraine. The legislation requires the Biden administration to establish expedited procedures for delivering military equipment to Ukraine and other affected Eastern European countries to defend populations made vulnerable by Vladimir Putin's aggression. It also facilitates the provisioning of loaned and or leased defense articles to Ukraine, easing a myriad of administrative regulations and processes. Mr. Speaker, I urge everyone to support this legislation, and I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman from Maryland reserves. The gentleman from Pennsylvania is recognized.